You think a waitress with a dead career and a dying mother can threaten me? That was what he whispered loud enough for everyone to hear before tossing a $100 bill at her feet. But what happened next didn't just silence the room. It lit a fire that would ripple through boardrooms, courtrooms, and an old dancer's broken shoes. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The kitchen behind the Cormont's ballroom smelled of roasted lamb and citrus cleaner. Orders snapped through the room while trays clattered on the steel counters. Elowen Hart adjusted her apron and slid past a line cook, her voice low, when she asked for an extra stack of napkins. Another double shift, a busboy asked, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. Yeah, need to cover some bills, she said without looking up. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it at first, but when the vibration insisted, she pulled the device free. A rent alert glowed on the screen. With a flick, she shut it dark again and shoved it back, fingertips grazing the tarnished bracelet at her wrist, the one her father had left behind on the counter the day his construction shop folded. In the staff lounge, a thin envelope waited. She slid the page open, eyes skimming the words "regret to inform you." Third rejection in 2 months. She folded the letter into a square so small it vanished beneath her palm. Still chasing that grant, the busboy asked from the doorway. Elowen gave a faint smile. Some habits die hard. She slipped the paper into her bag and rose. The freight elevator rattled upward. Her reflection wavered across the dented panel uniform, crisp though her eyes looked worn. A streak of flour on her sleeve resembled chalk on a rehearsal floor. The bell chimed. Light spilled in as she stepped out, balancing a tray brimming with champagne. Ahead, the ballroom gleamed, chandeliers dripping gold over marble, guests' laughter, scattering like beads on stone. Quick, uneven footsteps struck behind her. A brush against her arm jolted the tray just as she crossed the threshold. The champagne wavered, but held. Elowen adjusted her grip, wrist flexing to steady the tall flutes before they could betray her. Just glasses, just a tray. But in a room like this one, slip could unravel an evening. She didn't glance back. The hurried clack of heels was explanation enough. Guests rarely watched their paths. They weren't expected to. Before her, the ballroom spread like a stage. A ceiling so high it threatened to swallow sound. Chandeliers strung bright as constellations. Tulips, white as snowfall, perfumed the air with delicate sweetness, imported, arranged exact. Underneath it, a sharper note lingered. Chanel No. 5, most likely. The fragrance of women who never had to say please. Elowen threaded silently between tables draped in ivory linen, silver cutlery, and crystal glinting under chandelier light. Her shoes whispered against the carpet. At the center, laughter spilled from one table, frothy as wine poured too fast. And there she saw him. Bennett Langford, exactly as the tabloids painted him, though colder. He reclined like someone auditioning for indifference. Cufflinks winked against his sleeves. A clean jaw, a careless grin, the kind people inherit, not earn. One hand toyed with a glass of red, the other traced loose gestures as he spoke to the woman beside him. Veronica Sinclair, diamond earrings, eyes dulled by boredom. She listened without listening. Elowen sensed the chill before he even turned. When his gaze finally landed, it moved over her, not with curiosity, but with calculation, as though she were part of the architecture animated stone. From the back came a soft click. Jonas' Avery camera poised against his chest caught the instant before it faded. He didn't lift the lens yet. He only watched. Reaching the table, Elowen kept her face unreadable and began to pour water. "Oh, good," a half-drunk man said. "Hydration. Almost forgot we were human." Veronica looked up. "You're doing us a kindness," she said lightly. "Champagne dries the soul." Bennett's eyes stayed fixed. "Especially when it's poured with such focus." She offered no reply. Tilting the pitcher with measured care, she let the stream flow. But a bead of condensation slipped down the glass and splashed the white cloth near his elbow, blooming dark against the linen. Bennett leaned in. That, he murmured, setting down his wine, might be the truest drop of the night. Chuckles drifted around the table's surface-level amusement, but now all eyes lingered on her, not as staff, but as spectacle. "I'll fetch a napkin," she said, hand already in her pocket. "No hurry," Bennett countered, palm raised. "Unless you mean to dance it dry." Jonas frowned, fingers brushing his camera. Bennett's voice lifted just enough to carry. Actually, I've got an idea. The violinist shifted bow, sliding into a slow tango, low deliberate pulsing. A wager, Bennett declared, rising. 10,000 says she won't last a single dance. He gestured toward Elowen as though presenting an exhibit. Let's see if the girl with the tray can move. Applause, laughter, a shouted dare, let her try. Elowen didn't flinch. Almost casually, she set the tray onto a nearby cart, unpinned her apron, slipped off her shoes. No dramatics, just necessity. The marble under her socks felt cold, steadying. From the far side, Dorothy Ames pushed through the crowd, voice urgent but low. Elowen, don't, this isn't Elowen. Met her eyes and gave the faintest shake of her head. Not defiance, not surrender. Something older. Bennett extended his hand palm open, a parody of chivalry. She glanced once, then turned away. She walked to the center. Lights hummed overhead. Music tightened, coiling. Elowen halted, arms loose at her sides. She closed her eyes. The music didn't ask. It demanded. Elowen stepped forward, not with flourish, but with precision, like a blade sliding from its sheath. The tango coiled around her, beat by beat. She brushed Bennett's hand with the back of her fingers, a gesture more than acceptance, and took her place opposite him. He wore the smile of a man certain victory was already his. They circled. 2 steps. He moved as if it were still sport posture, half-relaxed head tipped toward an audience slipping away. She shadowed him at first, knees, loose breath, even gaze angled just beyond his shoulder. Then the weight shifted. On the next phrase, she reversed the balance. Quiet, firm, the lead became hers. Bennett faltered, not shocked, but unwilling to accept it. His shoes rasped against marble, already half a beat behind. Elowen moved with the composure of someone not trying to impress, but to reclaim. Around them, sound collapsed. Forks' stilled talk drained a hush, spreading uneasy, as though no one knew what they were seeing. Jonas lifted his camera. Each shudder fell in time with the violin's drawn-out breath. Elowen danced from memory, not routine. Her body carried the language of rooms long gone, yet she claimed this space, shoulders, open arms, unfolding like pages in quiet resolve. Bennett stumbled again, reaching for her waist. She spun clear. A pivot. A cross. The weight of the dance had turned. Her jaw stayed tight, her focus fixed not on him, but past him. The crowd leaned closer. They were no longer watching a waitress, not even a performer. They were watching someone come home to herself. Each movement unearthed fragments. Point shoes rasping across worn wood. Dust lit by morning sun. Her father's voice counting 4, 5, 6, yes again. The tang of pine and chalk. Calves burning but unbroken. She remembered not only the steps, but what it meant to live wholly inside her body. Jonas didn't lower the camera, catching frame after frame as if afraid the moment might dissolve. Bennett lagged, stumbling through a turn he couldn't finish, tuxedo, now clinging like it belonged to someone else. With a clean twist, Elowen slipped free. He grasped at air, stranded at the edge of the dance, his face drawn tight between confusion and something colder. She continued alone. One long, sweeping turn carried her back to center. The violin's last note stretched, held beyond expectation. She stopped, arms slack, breath harsh. Stray hairs clung to damp cheeks. Then stillness. No bow, no gesture. Only a waiting pause. A single clap cut the silence. Another followed. Then more, until the sound swelled, not raucous, but reverent, as though they glimpsed something unnamed. Bennett didn't move. His jaw worked around unsaid words. At last he drew a roll of bills from his jacket, thumbing them apart with brittle cracks. He let them fall. Notes drifted downward, fanning across marble, brushing her ankles, collecting in careless piles, unwanted snowfall. Elowen remained motionless. The hem of her dress lifted faintly in the breath of the vents. One bill snagged at her heel. She never looked down. Elowen bent slowly, fingers closing around the straps of her shoes. The polished floor beneath her knees still carried the fading scent of perfume. Banknotes shifted against her ankle untouched. Money scattered like fragments of something broken, an illusion of power, never power itself. I didn't dance for the money, she murmured, voice low enough to pass his thought. She pulled the shoes back on, leather stiff from long hours of standing. Eyes followed her. Not with the greedy hunger from before, but with uncertain reverence, as if no one knew whether they had witnessed defiance or theater. Her path toward the service corridor cleared. No one stepped in her way. Dorothy waited by the back hall, lips parted, glasses glinting as her eyes narrowed. Elowen met her for half a second, then looked past her toward the metal door and the world beyond the chandelier haze. The kitchen lights buzzed. A cook cursed somewhere in the steam. The hallway shrank in darkened glamour, peeling into tile smeared with grease and bleach. Her locker stuck again. A light kick with her heel freed it. She changed wordlessly. Out front, the gala resumed, glasses, ringing laughter, swelling back in uneasy waves. Behind the wall, Elowen wiped lipstick from her mouth with a napkin's corner, wrapped her scarf twice around her neck like armor, and pushed through the groaning staff door. The Manhattan wind struck like a slap. Her coat was too thin, but it was all she had. She walked fast, breath misting in the cold chill threading between her shoulders. Heels clattered for half a block before she ducked into a bus shelter, stripped them off, and stood barefoot on the frozen metal bench to lace-worn sneakers. The bus arrived late as usual. She climbed aboard and chose a window seat near the back. Heat lingered thick with tired fabric and overworked bodies. Queens blurred past in amber fragments. Apartment windows blinked like weary eyes, neon signs flickered, clouds pressed low with the weight of storms yet to decide. She unclipped her hair. Relief spread across her scalp as she leaned to the glass cheek against the cold fog. Passing streetlights cut through mist in intervals, turning her reflection into a ghost in motion, frame by frame. One buzz, then another, then a third. She didn't reach for the phone. By the time she stepped off the bus and into her neighborhood, the vibration had become a constant hum. Her pocket throbbed like a trapped pulse. Still, she ignored it. Her building's hallway reeked of warm plastic and overboiled vegetables. Fluorescent light stuttered overhead, shadows jerking across the walls. On the third-floor apartment, 3B's door stuck before giving way. Her mother slept in the recliner, oxygen hissing softly, television flickering on mute. A blanket had slipped halfway down her knees. Elowen set her bag aside, lifted the blanket back into place, and breathed through her nose, the scent sharp with antiseptic wipes and peppermint balm. She sank onto the couch's worn edge and unlocked her phone. Dozens of texts, several missed calls, too many voicemails. She dismissed them all. At the top of the screen glowed a headline, "The Waitress Who Danced." A moment of art and a night of power beneath it, a black and white photo, her mid-spin arm slicing airface unreadable. Jonas's name marked the byline. The image already rippled across accounts. Her thumb lingered above the article. She locked the screen. Not tonight. Silence settled again, broken only by the whisper of oxygen. Her grip tightened briefly on the phone before she set it face down on the table. She pressed both palms into her knees, waiting for her breath to even. A knock sounded. 3 taps, polite, measured. She froze, crossed to the door and peered through the peephole. Jonas Avery stood outside, rain speckling his shoulders. Camera slung across his chest, a small memory card in hand. The card felt strangely warm in her hand, though plastic couldn't hold heat. She tightened her grip before stepping aside. Jonas entered quietly, his glance flicking once toward her mother, still asleep in the recliner. "I won't stay long," he said. "I just needed to ask something in person." He dropped his bag beside the couch and pulled out a slim laptop. The screen lit up with a draft headline, "The Waitress Who Danced." "I think it's more than a moment," he said. "It was a fracture. Something broke open when you stepped on that floor." Elowen stayed silent, her attention slipping to the wall where a calendar still clung to March, though April was nearly done. "I'm not asking for your whole story," Jonas continued, voice lowered. "Just let me write the truth of what happened. Even if it's only that night. People should see it." She turned to him, at last, expression flat. "No name." He nodded too fast. The flicker in his jaw betrayed him. "You already knew," she said. Jonas hesitated. "Not until I noticed the bracelet. The name Hart Construction. My dad hired your father back in Queens. Said he was the only one who charged fair." The pause between them thickened. She pushed the memory card back into his palm. No name. No photos of my mother. No embellishment. He started to speak, maybe to argue, maybe to promise, but her gaze had already shifted toward the dim light above the sink. By the time he left, dawn was lifting. She never slept. Mid-morning, high above the city in a glass-walled office, Bennett Langford shifted in his chair, while his father stared out at the skyline. Vaughn Langford never raised his voice. He didn't need to. "She's no one," Bennett muttered, loosening his collar. "Just a waitress with a flair for theatrics. She made you look like a boy playing king," Vaughn replied evenly. "Fix it, before she becomes a symbol. A symbol of what Vaughn turned eyes hard as granite, of everything we've kept out of the headlines for 40 years. Before noon, Bennett was on the phone with his lawyer. "I want everything on her. Parents addresses debts. Find the angle before this spreads." "Do you have a name?" the lawyer asked. A pause. Hart, Bennett said, recalling a dusty job site years ago. A tall man with hands like stone, walking away from a gutted deal his father had orchestrated. At a small cafe tucked behind Queensboro Plaza Station, Jonas worked through his second coffee. Across from him, Elowen traced the peeling edge of the table's laminate. Her coat hung damp from drizzle. He slid the laptop toward her. The article was nearly finished, unsentimental but honest. "You should know," he said quietly, "my editor called this morning. If I publish, I'll probably lose the job." She raised her brow. "I don't care," he added. "I just thought you should hear it." Elowen gave a half shrug. "They'll come for me harder than they ever will for you." A waitress passed with a pot of coffee. "Refill." Jonas lifted his mug. Elowen shook her head. When the woman moved on, he asked, "Are you sure you want this life to stay quiet?" A dry laugh slipped from her. "Quiet. I got a letter last night. No return address. Just one line. Stay quiet. You don't want your mother's insurance to disappear." His jaw tensed. "Did you report it to who? The cops?" "Langford probably owns half the precinct." He didn't argue. Elowen pulled the bracelet from her bag. The metal had dulled worn. He used to swear it was real silver. "It's nickel. Tarnishes easy. Still lasts." Jonas leaned in. "I'll blur your name. Hide your face. But let me publish. Let people see what power looks like when it cracks." She offered no answer. She leaned back, eyes closed, listening to something beyond reach. Rain ticked steadily against the glass. Jonas turned the laptop back to himself. His fingers skimmed the trackpad. The glow of the screen lit Elowen's lashes. The headline hung there: "How One Dance Exposed the Truth Behind Power." Starch clung to Donovan's records office, dry, overlit, too still. Elowen passed a row of alumni plaques, their glass smeared and forgotten. At reception, the woman behind the desk didn't bother to look up. "Name Elowen Hart." "I'm looking for my student file." The receptionist yawned. "ID." She slid over her license. The woman scanned it, sighed, and shuffled into the vault of drawers behind her. Left alone, Elowen's eyes drifted to the dusty plastic plant in the corner. It had stood there since she was 17. She remembered staring at it through tears, waiting to hear if she'd been admitted. A drawer slammed. A folder landed on the counter. "Don't leave with it." "You've got 20 minutes." Elowen lifted it carefully as though it might crumble. The paper edges curled with humidity, her old student ID number still scrawled in red ink across the cover. She carried it to the lone table by the window light, falling across the scratched surface. Her name sat neatly at the top of the first page. Beneath evaluations, some glowing, others blunt. Missed assignments. A warning letter after she abandoned her final semester. She turned the pages slowly. A folded sheet peeked out from behind the financial aid forms. Project termination agreement, client, Donovan School of Dance. Contractor, Hart Construction Group. Facilitator, Langford Urban Holdings. Her breath caught. At the bottom, a blue ink signature curved like a blade, Vaughn Langford. Elowen clutched the table edge until her knuckles paled. Blood pulsed through her palms, steady and insistent. The name stung like a splinter between her teeth. Sharp, bitter. She closed the file, slid the contract into her coat, and walked out without a word. The studio hadn't changed much, though time had left its scars. Light leaked through torn canvas where windows used to be. The bars were cracked. One mirror carried a long fracture down its center, like lightning frozen. Jonas sat near the door, sketchbook open. "You didn't tell me this place still stood," he said. "I didn't know it did." She dropped her bag, shrugged off her coat, and drew out the folded contract. Without a word, she handed it to him. He read once, then again. His expression darkened, though his lips stayed shut. "My father thought he was saving a future," she said. Langford Urban stepped in when Donovan broke our first deal, promised to finish the job. 2 weeks later, they halted construction and sued for breach of contract. She crossed the warped floorboards, her steps uneven. We lost the business. Insurance didn't cover the legal fees. He sold the house, moved in with my aunt. Eventually, he stopped speaking at all. Just sat. Every day. Jonas rose slowly, pencil still tucked behind his ear, though he'd stopped drawing. Did you ever tell anyone no one would have listened? Dust spun in the light between them. Elowen moved toward the center of the room, arms stretching wide. Fingers curved, lifted. She slid into a slow port de bras. Her ankle trembled, but she kept going. A half turn, another. Her body remembered what her bones resisted. Jonas stayed silent, not even breath loud enough to intrude. She ended the phrase, kneeling spine, lifted one hand suspended, as if waiting for music to return. A breeze slipped through the cracked window, brushing her neck. Jonas's phone buzzed. He stepped outside, murmuring into it, pacing under the overhang. Elowen held her stance, weight grounding her, hand lowering gradually, not in surrender, but in command, as though dropping a curtain after a final bow. Jonas came back minutes later, breath uneven. "There's someone you need to meet," he said, words taut but lit with urgency. She arched a brow, wiping her palm on her jeans. "Desmond Hale," he said. He read the draft. He hasn't wanted to speak to anyone in years. Until now. She didn't answer. The name meant nothing. But Jonas, he looked different, like he'd just seen lightning strike dry ground. "He's not media," he added quickly. "He's something else." Rain ticked against the broken skylight. Elowen's eyes shifted toward the bars. The contract still lay where Jonas had dropped it. With the side of her foot, she nudged it away, never glancing down. The elevator crawled upward like it carried a limp. Elowen pressed her palms against the folder. Old audition forms, a curled-edge headshot, a torn resume that still smelled faintly of printer ink and ambition. The doors sighed open with a wheeze. At the end of the hallway, a frosted pane bore the letters, Desmond Hale Studio. No buzzer, no assistant. Only muffled piano from another floor and the faint trace of lemon oil mixed with sweat. She knocked once. The door creaked open. No greeting. She stepped in. The room stretched, tall and bare glass walls holding their ghosts. Wooden floors wore pale scuffs at the center. Along the back wall, a row of black folding chairs leaned like silent jurors. One was occupied. Desmond Hale sat hunched, long fingers knotted over his knees, a scarf looped twice around his neck, though the room was warm. He didn't wave, didn't rise. "Are you Elowen Hart?" he asked, as if he already knew. "Yes." He nodded once. Jonas sent the clip. "I don't care about clips." Her pulse quickened. Dance. No music. No cue. Just the single word, flat as stone dropped in water. She didn't argue. Slipped off her shoes. Stepped to the center of the floor. Closed her eyes. The stillness hummed, ventilation rattling above beams, creaking far-off horns bleeding through from the avenue. She let her weight sink, then rose. A slow turn. A breath into fourth position. Arms unfurled like smoke, lifting through sunbeams. Her body found rhythm in nothing but heartbeat and memory. The floor exhaled beneath her steps. Glass threw back her shadow, a double moving with her, then tearing away. She stopped. Desmond hadn't moved. He sat, eyes narrowed, lips parted as though holding a question. "I can hear the Donovan in your hips," he said. She blinked. "Good weight transfer? But something's missing." She steadied her breath. "I haven't trained in years, I can tell. But that's not what's missing." A pause hung. He stood, not tall, but severe, lean as a cello neck. He paced once, then faced her again. "Why'd you stop?" The answer slipped out easier than expected. "My father lost his business. Langford killed the contract, took everything. He never recovered. I dropped out to work to cover my mother's care. She's on oxygen now." Desmond didn't flinch. His reply stayed level. "You think you're the first whose life cracked? No. Then don't hand me your scars like they're a resume." His eyes didn't harden. They didn't need to. He crossed to the window, peered down as if considering escape, then turned back. "There's a piece I've been rebuilding. Echoes. It's about collapse and return. A woman survives a fire, walks back into the ruins, and hears herself there." She stayed silent. I need someone fractured in the right places, he went on. Not dramatic, structured in grief, someone who treats the stage as reckoning, not confession. Her gaze dropped to her feet, pale with dust. You want me to audition? He shook his head. I want you to take the lead. Her lips parted. You think I'm joking? He asked, not unkind. No, just surprised. He adjusted his scarf again. Rehearsals start Monday. Don't be late. She didn't move. Oh, and one more thing, he added, already walking off. We don't cry here. We bleed into movement. The door clicked shut behind him. Rain was falling by the time she reached the pharmacy near 35th, and Archer, her mother's prescriptions always waiting there, prepaid through a nonprofit program that now felt more fragile than ever. She entered, damp hair plastered to her cheeks. The pharmacist looked up from the register, a young woman maybe her age. Her eyes narrowed. Wait, the girl said slowly. You're the waitress. From that video. Elowen held her gaze. A pause, she smiled. No, I just look like her. By 6, the studio had woken barely. Wooden floors breathed back the night's cold, and mirrors along the wall held the faint smear of dawn. Elowen dropped her bag at the door, rolled her ankles, and stepped barefoot into the middle of the room. The floor was slick with memories, scuff marks, resin sweat lines from yesterday's battle. Her joints throbbed in protest, and she hadn't even begun. She didn't wait for Desmond. Arabesque, fall, recover, plie, rise, wince, repeat. When he arrived, he skipped greetings. He always did. Leaning against the bar, arms folded, he studied her as though measuring whether she'd last the next hour. At 6:42, she crashed from a failed lift. The smack of her body against the floor rang out. She neither wept nor swore. After 3 heartbeats, she sat up and yanked the elastic tighter around her bun. Do it again, Desmond said. She rose. By 8, her feet were raw blisters, blooming under the toes, the heel beginning to split. Tape around her arches had bunched, forming ridges that pinched with every step. She pressed forward through the pain, treating it like background static. At 8:40, Jonas slipped in, carrying 2 coffees and his camera gear. He set the drinks on the sill, crouched low, and began clicking, no flash, no commentary. Only the rhythm of shudder and breath. He caught her mid-pirouette, mid-wince, mid-war. Desmond called out corrections, but sparingly now. He wasn't there to soften the blows. She'd earned that restraint. At 9:30, the whisper spread. Rachel, one of the dancers, stood by the elevator scrolling her phone. Langford's people. They're calling donors, threatening to pull support if she performs. The words drifted through the dressing room like a draft of winter air. Elowen didn't reply. She sat near the window, unwrapped her lunch, an apple, a boiled egg, a granola bar with the taste of cardboard. She bit once and set it aside. Beyond the glass, the city surged in different cabs, blaring pedestrians, dodging puddles, cranes swinging overhead like mechanical arms. Everything carried rhythm, except her. Jonas took the seat beside her, leaning back, camera balanced on his knee. Bennett's planning a press conference, he said. Full apology. Scripted to the comma? Of course, she murmured. He wants to smother it before it grows. It's already grown. Her voice came thinner than intended. He said nothing further. He offered her one of the coffees, now lukewarm. She accepted. The steam curled faintly between them. Desmond summoned her back without turning. She stood. Back at center, her body trembled before the music even began. Every nerve warned against another lift. Her shoulder pulsed, her right ankle twitched in protest. She moved anyway. The first step faltered. The second steadied. By the 5th, the room hushed. Jonas crouched in the corner, capturing the moment her spine lengthened, and her eyes locked with the figure in the mirror. He didn't need to frame it. The image defined itself. Elowen reached the end of the phrase, folded forward, hands braced on her knees. Desmond crossed to her, pressed a towel into her palm. Don't let them write your story, he murmured. She clenched the cloth. Sunlight broke through heavy clouds, streaking across the studio wall in gold bars. One beam struck her back, hot and unyielding, like the weight of being seen. She exhaled. Traffic roared down 9th Avenue. In another part of the city, inside a walnut-trimmed office, Bennett Langford studied a list of names, sponsors, publications, legal advisors. What if she keeps going? He asked. Across the desk, Vaughn Langford didn't blink. Then handle it, or step aside for someone who will. Bennett's jaw flexed. Back in the studio, Elowen dragged her sweatshirt over sore shoulders. The fibers scraped her raw skin. She didn't flinch. She passed Jonas, giving a single nod. No smile, no word. The sky had shifted to that in-between shade before noon, neither gold nor gray. She paused at the door. Her fingers lingered on the handle. Not hesitation. Breath. Desmond, clipboard in hand, was already marking notes for the next sequence. She stepped into the hall, shoes dangling, damp footprints trailing behind her. The studio lay hushed except for the creak of her footfall on worn boards. Elowen stretched with the screen propped against a bar. A livestream window blinked open. Bennett Langford stood beneath a Langford Group emblem tie knotted so tight it pressed into his collarbone. Cameras clicked. His palms spread flat on the podium. "I would like to apologize," he began, tone drained of color, "to anyone who felt uncomfortable or disrespected during the Langford Foundation Gala." He never looked up. Eyes stayed on the script line by sterile line. Across town, Elowen's knee wavered under her next movement. She lowered her foot, went still, bottle of water in hand, watching. "My actions were inappropriate and not reflective of the values this company holds." Desmond entered, gave the screen a glance, then disappeared into his office without a word. Bennett's voice droned on. "Langford Group believes in integrity, inclusion, and the empowerment of all communities." A shout pierced the feed. "Have you apologized directly to Ms. Hart?" Another. "Is it true your family's real estate division caused the collapse of Hart Construction in '06? And a third. Was her father one of your company's targets?" Plastic groaned as Elowen's grip tightened around the bottle. On-screen security surged forward. Cameras flared in rapid bursts. Bennett's posture faltered, face flushing as his jaw locked. He blinked against the barrage, still refusing to meet the lens, still refusing her name. The live stream cut to logo and music that sounded like a dirge. Elowen sank onto the bench by the mirrored wall, elbows braced on her knees. Her reflection stared back, more wary than weary. From the corner, Jonas lifted his lens. No shutter this time, just the whisper of focus adjusting. His frame caught her in profile, the blue glow of the screen, slicing her jawline into metal. He captured the instant her breath snagged, when something beneath her gaze shifted. Not pain, not surprise. Recognition. Cold, unyielding. Back at the apartment, she cracked the window to draw in the murmur of traffic and sat cross-legged on the couch. Her mother stirred, coughing into her sleeve. "You okay?" Elowen asked. A slow blink. "Was it today?" She nodded. "Yeah, he did it." Her mother eased back, eyes turning toward the muted television. "People like him don't apologize. They just say words." No reply came. Fingers worried the label on her water bottle until it unraveled. In the kitchenette, Jonas's phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number glowed beneath a lock icon. "Langford Harbor contracts now under audit. Investigators want to talk. Ask if she'll speak." He looked up, catching her across the room. The shift in his expression set her brow in a furrow. "What is it?" Jonas handed over the phone. She read once, then again. The silence deepened. The kettle clicked off in the background. She passed the device back and leaned forward, elbows on thighs, staring at her feet. "The harbor," she said. Jonas nodded. "It's starting to unravel." Her hands laced together, knuckles whitening. "Do they want a statement?" "No." He hesitated. "They want your story. On record." The fridge hummed. Her mother had drifted deeper into sleep, curled toward the cushions. Elowen rose and crossed to the window. Streetlights glimmered through haze halos smeared across the sidewalk. She stood there until the tea went cold, then turned, face unreadable. Jonas hadn't moved. "Tell them I'll talk." Her voice was steady, nearly a whisper. He gave a single nod, lifted his phone, began to type. With his free hand, he flipped open the laptop. The screen lit with the last photo he'd taken Elowen in the studio, steel blue light cutting her posture into resolve. She reached for the remote and shut off the TV, deepening the hush. A sharp knock jolted the room. 3 raps, formal and fast. Jonas's phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Another message. "Langford internal documents are leaking. There's more than just the harbor. Grass along the east edge of Central Park still slick from drizzle." Elowen followed the curve of the walking path, steps, muted rubber soles brushing wet pavement. The scent of damp earth clung to each breath, fresh, sharp, oddly grounding. Jonas waited near a bench tucked beneath a willow sleeves, rolled messenger bag leaning against one leg. He gave a small wave, then sat back without speaking, letting the hush settle between them. Children's laughter carried faintly from a playground. Elowen joined him, brushing damp strands from her face. A crow flapped once overhead. Jonas drew a folder from his bag. They verified the Langford files. Zoning tricks, shell contracts, council bribes. All tied to Vaughn's waterfront projects, including the one your father refused. She didn't take it. Her eyes followed a leaf spiraling down, landing in a puddle with a muted plop. "They'll come after you," she said. "They already are." A squirrel darted up the path, paused at her feet, then fled. She leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I thought the worst was years ago," her voice thinned, watching him pack his office, hearing Mom lie to creditors, the night she rushed him to the ER, pressure crushing his chest. Jonas studied her hands curled at the edges as if guarding something fragile. "You can stay anonymous," he offered. "I'll write it that way." Her reply came steadier. "No. Then it becomes someone else's story." Clouds massed overhead, swollen and dark. Neither moved. That night in the apartment, Elowen sat by her mother's chair. The oxygen tank clicked and hissed, steady as a metronome. Her mother slept, brow furrowed, even in rest. She kept the lights off. Phone in hand, messages unopened. She pressed her thumb to the call button. "Hey, Mama," she whispered when the line connected, voice catching. Came the drowsy reply. "Just checking if you're sleeping." "Sort of," her mother mumbled. "You okay?" "Yeah." A breath passed. "I love you," Elowen said. Her mother didn't answer at once, only drew an air, a pause before emotion filled the space. "I love you too, baby," she said finally. The call ended. Elowen sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling until morning brushed the blinds. By the time Jonas picked up her call the next day, she was at the cafe counter, black coffee, warming her palms. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded, though he couldn't see it. "Write it." Silence stretched on the line. She imagined him pushing a hand through his hair, eyes narrowing as the weight sank in. "Okay." Later, in a room above the cafe, Jonas opened his laptop. Clatter of cups drifted through the floorboards. Rain tapped the panes, insistent this time. He created a new document. The cursor blinked at the top. Fingers hovered, then typed, "Death of a Dancer," no subtitle. No byline yet. Just the title, fragile but defiant. A stray draft rustled across the floor, stirring headlines from a world unraveling. But in this corner of Manhattan, truth prepared to step into its shoes. He stared once more, then began to write. Across the city, a glass tower glowed gold in the fading light. Vaughn Langford stood at the window of his office, phone buzzing on the desk. "Sir, there's been a response from—" "Not now," he cut in, gaze fixed on something past the skyline. Downstairs in the lobby, security guards adjusted their ties. Reporters had begun to gather again. Back in the cafe, Jonas's hands moved faster. Paragraphs stacked, timelines aligned. The truth took shape, not loud, not furious, but deliberate. Meanwhile, Elowen carried groceries home in a paper bag. She never checked her phone. She didn't need to. Her name had crossed the chalk line. There would be no step back. The article went live at dawn. By the time Elowen tightened the second knot on her worn ballet shoes, the image had spread 10,000 times. Jonas's photograph filled the feed the moment her body twisted midair, Bennett stumbling behind $100 bills suspended in descent. The headline read, "The Woman Who Danced Her Debt into Dust." At the Broadway studio, Desmond stood near the wall, arms crossed, unreadable. He didn't comment. He didn't need to. Jonas slipped his phone into his jacket, gaze locked on her posture. Elowen didn't speak either. She simply stepped into first position, then fourth, and began. Each turn sent drops of sweat scattering across the scuffed wood floor. Her tank top clung to her spine, toes pressed into bruises already blooming beneath the skin. But her focus was like glass, sharp, clean, cutting through doubt. Conference room blinds snapped shut across the city, hands trembling on the cords. At the head of the mahogany table, Vaughn Langford sat with sleeves rolled, thumb tapping against a tumbler of untouched scotch. Lawyers murmured, sliding tablets forward, numbers bleeding red across the stock monitor, Langford Group sinking. "Control it," Vaughn said at last. Bennett slammed his palm down, sending a pen clattering across the polished wood. "It's one damn girl," he hissed, "a waitress with a sob story and flexible ankles. Now she's a movement, someone muttered too low for Bennett, but not for Vaughn. The elder Langford rose slowly, every head followed. Break her quietly, he instructed. Loud failures turn into martyrs. Silent ones vanish. In the studio, Elowen's breath came uneven. Desmond clapped once. Again. She nodded, turned toward the mirror. Moisture from her breath clouded the glass, blurring the face that stared back, older, harder, a twin shaped by pressure. Jonas edged closer. You okay? His voice low. I'm tired, she whispered, flexing her fingers. But not broken. Her phone buzzed on the bench. She glanced mid-stretch. A message, no sender, opening night. There will be no stage for you. The words sat on the screen like stones. She slipped the device beneath her bag and returned to center. Movements carried new tension, not fear something steelier. Desmond's eyes narrowed. You're dancing like the floor might give way. No reply. Only a reset stance. Reporters clustered at Langford headquarters. Morning Talk shows dissected zoning fraud shell firms' political payouts. 10 floors up, a junior analyst whispered into her headset, if the shareholder meeting collapses, a recall vote could trigger. In his private suite, Bennett stared at the TV glow. A Scotch glass slid from his hand and shattered on the floor. At the newsroom, Jonas faced his editor, shoulders squared. You realize this isn't just a profile piece anymore, she said. It's war. I know. She's a dancer. You're putting her at the center of a corporate takedown. No, he corrected. They put her there when they destroyed her father and left her carrying the wreckage. The editor leaned back. Then don't let her get buried under it. That night, Elowen stood alone in the studio. Overhead, lights stretched shadows toward the exits. Limbs ached, wrists trembled with each sharp turn. The mirror didn't blink, and neither did she. She launched into a sequence Desmond hadn't written, an improvised storm of spins, sudden drops, jagged steps stitched from memory and defiance. Jonas lingered at the doorway. No camera lifted. He only watched her carve the silence, watched her body speak a language older than apology. When she stopped, lungs raw, her gaze met the mirror. The blur fractured into two shapes, one her own, the other, the version they had tried to erase. The black curtain sighed as Elowen pushed through. Backstage lay muted, no idle chatter, no clatter of wheels, only the low hum of tired lights and the echo of her steps crossing the wings. Props leaned uneven along the rail. A chair sat half off its mark. One velvet flat sagged at an angle, its bottom edge gnawed like rats had been through. She knelt, ran her fingers along the corner. The gaffer tape had been peeled up in thin strips. Deliberate. Above, something shifted on the fly rail, a faint creak. Elowen stepped back instinctively, gaze flicking upward. Nothing fell. Nothing moved again. Yet the sense of being watched lingered like the aftertaste of smoke. Her path carried her towards center stage, steps measured. From beneath the boards came a slow creak, the rhythm of old timber, settling or remembering. She stopped at the mark where her solo would begin the next night and closed her eyes. The sound deepened. Not wood, memory. That same strained crackle she'd once heard in the silence of a parked car. Her father gripping blueprints he could no longer afford to print. The pitch of a structure under pressure, not collapsing yet, but close enough to force, held breath. A shiver climbed her spine. She retreated from the mark. Jonas wasn't in the theater. He'd climbed the fire escape camera, knocking against his hip, the city spilling wide below silver and orange streetlights, blinking like nervous Morse code. Wind pressed his jacket tight as he pulled out his phone and hit redial. Who else is involved, he asked before the line fully opened. Static. Then the board's nervous. Vaughn's making offers. To who, unclear. But if I were you, I'd keep her off the stage tomorrow. The call dropped. Jonas stared over the edge of the roof. A siren cut 2 blocks away. A cab roared past, drivers shouting something lost to the wind. He drew one sharp breath, then headed back down the fire escape 2 steps at a time. Below, Elowen traced the perimeter of the wings. Each curtain panel she passed stirred slightly as if brushed by her presence or something else. Fingers slid along the orchestra pit rail. They came away dusty. In the green room, a mug sat, abandoned lipstick faint on the rim. Pale pink, unfamiliar. No one on the crew used that shade. She left it untouched. The quick change hall ended at the call board. A slip of paper hung pinned there. Handwritten, unsigned, tomorrow ends early. Make peace with that. Jonas found her standing before it, his breath still uneven, jacket, half-zipped hair in disarray. He looked as though he'd outrun a fire. "We have a problem," he said. Elowen turned. He lifted his phone. The screen glowed briefly, then dimmed. "Sponsors are under pressure. Threats. No names, but someone's working to shut this down." "I know." Her tone stayed calm. "You found something, not something. Enough." She gestured toward the stage. That flat was cut, deliberately. If it had been pulled mid-show, the whole piece would have collapsed. Jonas froze. Her words carried on steady. "They're betting I'll panic, that I'll see this and quit." A gust rattled the stage door. Across the street, the deli's neon sign cast red light through the high backstage window, flickering over them both. "Open 24 hours. He stepped closer. "What do we do?" Elowen's eyes shifted toward the dressing room hall. The mirror there still bore her name in shaky Sharpie Hart E. In her head, Desmond's voice repeated, "We don't rehearse fear. We perform through it. We go on," she said. Jonas gave a single nod, though his grip on the phone tightened. From the lobby came the faint thud of a door unlocking. Overhead, the vent sighed. Elowen held the bar until her knuckles paled. The room lay hushed except for the creak of wood beneath her soles and the faint rhythm of her breath. Morning light sliced through the high windows in fractured strips, falling across the scuffed floor like silent metronomes. Desmond stood a few paces away, arms crossed, gaze steady. He'd said nothing when Elowen arrived late, hollow-eyed lips drained of color. Now without a word, he stepped forward and set a fresh towel on the bench. "Elowen," he murmured, voice flat as an old piano key. "They only win if they steal your rhythm." No reply came. He gestured toward the open floor. "Start from the fifth variation. Don't stop for doubt." One foot pressed to the mark. Inhale. Ankle twitching fatigue or fear, but the spine lengthened into line. She moved. A turn sharp, a lift fluid. Each gesture exact, pared down, stripped of flourish. No indulgence, only the truth of muscle and air. Jonas wasn't at the studio yet. He sat in a booth at Molly's Tap 2 subway stops away across from a man in a cheap wool coat who stirred his club soda endlessly. Jonas slid a manila envelope across the table. "This is it." The man nodded once. Everything Langford's legal tried to bury. Port contracts, zoning overrides, manipulated minutes. Vaughn's signature on all of it. "You're certain it holds printed?" And watch them crawl. Jonas didn't linger. He left bills on the counter and bolted for the subway, pulse hammering. Back in the studio, Elowen stood at center. Sweat darkened the small of her back. For 20 minutes, she'd repeated the same sequence, pushing past grace into grit. A tremor flickered in her shoulder, unhidden. The door swung wide, wind chasing Jonas in like an accusation. She froze mid-rotation. He crossed to her, still breathless, and held out the folder. "They rigged it all. Not just your father's contracts. They planned to gut that neighborhood years ago. Made it look like bad luck." Elowen touched the folder's edge without taking it. Desmond approached, eyes on the papers, then on her. "Will it help you dance?" Jonas hesitated. "No," she answered. The folder was placed gently on a chair, as if setting aside fragile glass. Then she stepped forward again, arms lifted, chin tilted. The next movement began like smoke low contained. Each breath shaped the room, each form shifted into something sharper, truer. The story she'd never voiced etched itself into space. Her father's hands crushing blueprints, her mother's labored breath in the dark. The day's shoes stayed in the closet because auditions cost subway fare. The first time she danced again just for herself on kitchen linoleum while soup boiled. Jonas stood by the mirror camera, slack at his side. "She's not dancing for the stage," he whispered. Desmond didn't move. "She's carving a memory." A pirouette sliced through stillness. Floorboards murmured under each landing. She didn't count beats. She didn't need to. This wasn't rehearsal, it was reclamation. At the end of the variation, stillness claimed her. Chest rose, then sank. Silence thickened until Desmond set a hand lightly on her shoulder. "No one choreographs the past," he said, "but you just gave it form." Her gaze turned to the mirror. For the first time in weeks, the image reflected their felt whole. No blur, no double figure pressing against her skin. Just her poised, grounded eyes, ringing clear as struck metal. A knock reverberated faintly from the hall. Jonas glanced over. "You expecting someone?" No Elowen said softly. Desmond's expression didn't change. "Then let them wait." Her eyes lingered 1 second longer on the mirror. Then she returned to center. The window light had shifted, not gold now, but silver white. Arms rose again. The house lights dimmed like a heartbeat easing into sleep. A collective breath rippled through the velvet rows of the Broadway theater investors. Journalists, alumni, strangers in evening wear who didn't yet know what they were about to see. Wine glasses stilled on armrests. Phones slipped into clutches. Whispers thinned into nothing. Then a single spotlight fell clean, cold, winter bright on marble. Elowen stepped into it. Not hurried, not hesitant. Her first footfall was quiet but deliberate, the kind of step that rewrote gravity. She wore a simple dress of black, in shadow its fabric, moving like smoke, catching the light only where it needed to. The theater around her disappeared. She didn't search for anyone's gaze. Not Jonas crouched behind the curtains with camera ready, not Desmond Hale standing like a sentry near the fly system. Not even her mother somewhere under the chandelier, breath tight in her chest. This was not a performance. This was a declaration. The music, when it came, was nearly imperceptible. No grand opening, just a low pulse, like something beginning beneath the surface. Strings brushed the silence. Then she moved. Her body bent, extended, spiraled. The choreography was minimal at first, almost like hesitation, but each motion carried weight. Not just the beauty of muscle, but the history etched into it. The double shifts, the declined scholarships, the aching wrists, the silence after "we regret to inform you." Bennett Langford sat 6 rows back, hands tight in his lap, jaw locked. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. The curve of his lip pulled downward, not quite a frown, more like a man waiting for something to end. Elowen didn't dance for him. She let her movements fracture time, every turn a chapter, undone, every plie a refusal to fold. A lift of the chin, an open palm, a sudden drop to her knees that stole the audience's breath. Jonas lowered the camera, not because he lost focus, but because some things didn't need a lens between them. In the wings, Desmond watched without moving. His face betrayed nothing, though the hand resting near the stage edge clenched tighter with each crescendo. Halfway through the second passage, the lights shifted. Dusk poured from the sidebars, casting long, angular shadows that chased her across the floor like ghosts summoned home. The solo turned less into steps than into stances. Less about movement, more about standing. Backstage, a stir. A man in a dark coat wove past the tech crew. He flashed a badge. The house manager hesitated, then stepped aside. Jonas caught it first. The side corridor door opened without a sound. A woman entered in flat black heels, leather folio. In hand expression unreadable. She paused beside Desmond. He did not flinch. The orchestra shifted key. Elowen rose to full-height arms, slicing the air, feet skimming the board's memory forged into muscle into defiance. The finale made no demand for volume. It didn't need to. She ended not with triumph, but with truth wrist crossed above her chest, gaze unwavering, daring the audience to look away. Blackout. For one breath, darkness held. No applause. Only the hum of current in the rafters. Then clapping began, tentative, sharp, then rising in waves until the hall shook. Some rose to their feet, some did not, but all stared toward the stage with something close to reverence, laced with fear. Because something had shifted. Backstage, the woman leaned to Desmond, speaking quick. The man beside her flipped open the folio. Affidavits. Subpoena forms. Contract scans stamped with the Langford seal papers, meant to stay buried. Desmond nodded once, eyes fixed on the stage, unblinking. Jonas edged forward from the wings, brushing a stagehand. His phone vibrated, another article pushed live. Another headline. How one dance opened a door. Too long locked. Elowen stayed rooted where she was, breath catching in her chest. Lashes damp with sweat or something more. The curtain remained up. The light still pinned her in place. Out in the dark, Bennett rose. Walked. Exited without a sound. Just off stage, a lawyer leaned toward Desmond, voice low but firm. The district attorney's waiting for her tomorrow. Elowen had not yet heard, but the war had already begun. The applause had long faded, swallowed by velvet curtains, and swept away with confetti petals backstage. Only the low hum of dressing room lights remained. Elowen sat motionless on the narrow bench, shoulders held upright as though the audience might burst in at any moment. Around her, bouquets bound with silk ribbons, folded programs, scrawled with praise notes from strangers who had never spoken to her before. One envelope bore gold foil initials she didn't recognize. Another invited her to speak on television. Elowen left the gifts untouched. Her focus caught on the pair of shoes beneath the vanity mirror. Canvas worn through, heel split wide from overuse. The left sole bore a stain that never lifted blood from a night she danced too long, stopped too late. A soft exhale. She lifted the right shoe, turned it in her palm. A knock. A voice at the door, likely a stage assistant. "You need anything?" No reply. Footsteps retreated. The shoes went into a towel, not carefully, not ceremoniously, and slid into her duffel beside the still folded dress. Hands moved with practiced ease. Change. Zip. Lift. By the time she slipped into the alley behind the theater, the street had quieted. A cab slowed, then rolled on. She caught a late subway instead, nearly empty, lights flickering overhead. Queens greeted her with its familiar hush. Unlocking the door quietly, she found the apartment as she'd left it. Her mother asleep in the recliner, television, paused mid-infomercial, oxygen machine, whispering like a second breath. No switch flipped. Bare feet carried her to the kitchen where she filled a glass, then paused by the cabinet drawer that once held her father's tools. She opened it. At the back, tucked between expired batteries and a folded tape measure, lay the bracelet. Steel links rusted slightly too loose for her wrist now, untouched since the day they closed his shop. It clasped around her skin again. She walked to the window. Streetlight shadows stretched across the sidewalk. A kid on a skateboard rolled past. Music drifted from a car, faint, uncelebratory. Just life moving forward. The bracelet clinked as she brushed fingers through her hair and let the weight of the moment settle, not collapse into grandeur, just remain. Morning came with the bus to the clinic. Mother and daughter rode together in silence. No words about the night before. No mention of headlines, cameras, subpoenas. Her mother never asked. Elowen never offered. The hallway gleamed seafoam green, a shade meant to soothe. Nurses strode past with clipboards. A janitor's bucket squeaked with each wheel turn. Her phone stayed buried in her coat pocket. Her mother's hand rested steady on the walker, veins branching like rivers beneath thin skin. After the exam, they sat in the small sunroom. 2 empty chairs by the window. Elowen helped her settle, then took the seat beside. No talk of pain or insurance. Just quiet, warm, and patient. A robin tapped once against the glass. Her eyes followed as it darted to the roof, wings catching light. She spoke only when her mother's hand reached across the space-dry fingers, brushing curling firm. "You're yourself again," her mother murmured. Not dramatic, not heavy. Just a sentence. Enough. Elowen gave a single nod. Later, leaving the building, sunlight startled her. It bounced from parked cars, seeped into her sleeves. At the corner, tree branches laced above, scattering gold through the last leaves of the season. Something in her paused, not fear, not fatigue, just breath. Her gaze lifted through the mesh of branches to a sky that no longer remembered gray. A breeze traced her cheek. No smile. But her eyes caught the light, and kept it. The courthouse smelled of old paper and polished floors, bureaucracy masked in lemon cleaner. Jonas waited near the chamber doors, camera stowed for once, tie loose at his throat. Beyond the wood panels, the final statement rolled through the high-ceilinged room like a gavel striking before the hammer itself. It was no longer just about the Hart family. Testimonies stacked beside spreadsheets, contracts with backdated stamps, shell companies tied to shell companies, and at the center, Langford Urban Holdings. Von Langford's signature surfaced again and again, projects abandoned mid-build, safety codes, bypassed invoices unpaid. Desmond sat stone still through most of it, glancing now and then toward Elowen. She never flinched. Bennett had been forced out 2 days earlier, discarded by his own board. His apology tour ended before it began. The press now called him the fall guy with the $1,000 haircut. Vaughn refused cameras, refused quotes. But even silence had a cost. Fines loomed, audits gathered, assets froze. His reputation wouldn't. In corporate halls, his name already drifted like a warning. Elowen kept away from microphones. She declined network interviews, ignored calls from streaming producers. Only once did she answer with a voice memo. 60 seconds. No music, no edits. I don't need them to say I was right. I just need them to make sure it doesn't happen again. That recording slipped onto late-night radio, wove through podcasts, found its way into small business forums, law student chats, community boards. Then came the letters. Typed, handwritten, stamps sun-faded, a florist in St. Paul, a father from East New York who tried to open a youth center until a developer pulled funding and left him buried under a tax lien. Owners of Detroit shops run into the ground by the same games. They thanked her, not for victory, but for endurance. The city churned on traffic, choking intersections, lights changing red to green glass towers staring into the sky. Yet near the Hudson, where salt and rust clung to every breath, time slowed. Elowen stood at the pier's edge. No red carpet, no stage. Just boots on uneven cement, the tide brushing rotted wood. The old Langford project had sat fenced off for years. Warning signs leaned on bent posts, unstable flooring. She slipped through a break in the chain link, the metal rattling behind her. No beams now. No scaffolding. Just air and ghost lines where walls once rose. Moss spread in corners, green forcing its way through cracks. She stopped where an office might have stood, or maybe the entry her father once described. No blueprints remained, but she almost heard his voice open. Beams, clean counters, real wood. A hand found her coat pocket. From it came a single rose, white and full. No ribbon, just something she'd bought at a corner deli without thinking. She crouched, brushed dirt aside with a sleeve, and set the flower on cracked cement. Not a grave. Not exactly. More like a returning. Wind tugged a strand of hair across her face. She let it stay. Sat low, palm braced on her thigh, watching water fold and unfold in stubborn rhythm. As if it had a destination, but no urgency to arrive. A gull cried. Another answered. Farther out, horns from a cargo ship rumbled their arrival or their leaving. Elowen rose slowly, knees stiff. Eyes dampened, though the damp itself was sharp and wet. Across the river, the skyline shimmered half real. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she turned back toward the fence, retracing her steps, but lighter. The building carried the faint tang of fresh paint in cheap pine wood. Mirrors streaked from rushed cleaning. Tape lines stretched across the floor, dividing the space into careful intentions. Not Broadway. It didn't pretend. In the corner of the new Queen's studio, Elowen knelt to retie a student's shoe. The boy, maybe 13, cheeks flushed from exertion, kept his eyes down as he nodded. She smiled anyway, tugged the knot firm, and rose. Start again, she said, voice steady but light. Around her, kids from all directions of the borough shuffled into place. Sweat-dampened collars, shoelaces trailed limbs bent out of rhythm. No one moved in perfect time, but every breath in that room tried. She didn't speak about form much. She spoke about gravity, how it tests you, how you listen to your own imbalance, then learn not to flinch. Behind a pane of glass, Jonas watched. Camera in hand, but he wasn't shooting. Not yet. His lens cap stayed on. Sometimes he clicked it off, only to lift the viewfinder, then lower it again. Some moments asked not to be captured. Some needed to live unframed. Flyers taped to the windows read, Dancers of Resilience. Free classes for those who thought they missed their chance. Desmond's name sat in small print at the bottom, listed under Artistic Advisor. He never attended. Said his work was done. Said the city needed other shapes now. That Saturday, a small performance unfolded at a public school auditorium, old seats humming stage lights, a curtain rod that squealed when pulled. Buzz rose from folding chairs, parents leaning forward, teachers whispering cues. Elowen chose the last row. Her mother sat beside her, hair thin, her eyes bright. No oxygen tank tonight, just a light scarf tucked around her neck and a thermos of mint tea. Their hands linked silently in her lap. Kids poured onto the stage like scattered marbles, their energy bouncing ahead of the beat. One by one, they found the rhythm, sometimes just barely. A girl in a yellow leotard overcorrected, spun too fast and stumbled. Gasps rippled through the audience, quick and nervous. The girl hesitated. Not long. She pushed herself up, adjusted her shoulders, and picked up the movement. No tears, no retreat, no one laughed. Elowen didn't applaud. Not yet. She only watched the girl's spine straighten the way her shadow realigned on the backdrop. It was enough. Afterward, children ran off stage, clutching juice boxes and snack packs. A volunteer handed Elowen a program folded too many times. She slipped it into her coat pocket unopened. Jonas met her at the exit. He raised a brow. Still not talking to the press? She shrugged, still not interested. They didn't say goodbye. He walked back to pack his gear. She slipped through the side door. Evening had turned the street gold. Leaves stirred along the sidewalk like confetti no one had thrown. Across the street, a music teacher played scales on an upright piano, the sound drifting through a cracked window. The notes weren't in any particular key, just patient, just trying. She passed the front gate slowly. Her reflection caught briefly in the window, looser now, shoulders freer, face still lined but quieter. At the corner, a child with headphones pirouetted out of sync with the crosswalk light. Elowen almost corrected her, then smiled and kept walking. The sun dipped low, brushing its final colors across brick walls and metal awnings. Her shoes tapped rhythm against the concrete, not in choreography, not in performance, just movement, just continuation. Somewhere behind her, laughter rose. Ahead, the street curved slightly, vanishing into the soft blur of dusk. She turned into it without hesitation. Not every battle ends with applause. Some end with a quiet breath, a standing figure, and a ripple of change no spotlight can measure. Elowen didn't dance to prove herself right. She danced to prove that power, real power, doesn't crush it, rises. If this story moves something in, you carry that rhythm into your world. Someone out there might still be standing in the dark, waiting for music to begin.